we're going to practice answering every question within 1 minute, because essentially you have 1 minute to answer the question. Okay. So this part here will be our advanced practice question. I just call it mastering the fundamentals. Advanced practice questions for ICF ACC readiness exam. Okay. So here, I will give you some helping clue, okay? Because at the top of each question, I will give you a clue of which domain it is, and then with the answer, so it can help you to quickly catch which one it is. Okay. Question number 1. A client discloses plans to engage in an illegal activity that could harm others. What's the coach's ethical responsibility? A. Respect clients confidentially and avoid judgment. B. Encourage the client to consider their plans without reporting the issue. Or C. Report the information to appropriate authorities as required by law. Or D. Seek supervision to discuss how to handle the situation. Okay. Answer should be C. Okay, so C should be the best answer. Okay, again, this has to do with our law of the land, right? Or the required law or violation of confidentiality. Okay. So this is something very, very easy in terms of advanced question. Question 2. A client shares a traumatic personal experience during a session. What is the coach's best response to stay within the boundary of coaching? A. Refer the client immediately to a therapist. B. Acknowledge the experience and ask how they would like to proceed in the session. C. Explore the emotional details of the trauma to gain clarity. Or D. Offer strategies to help the client manage their emotions. Okay, so if the client shares traumatic experience, this has to do with something of mental health as well. And to stay within, okay, of course, it looks like A in terms of therapies. It looks like exploring emotional details, but this is more of therapy. Offer strategies is too solution focused. So a lot of coaches, immediately what they want to do is offer strategies, offer solutions. So if we go with D, it's very much on solution focus. If we go to C, it's very much on therapeutic or therapy. If you go to A, it's you're too quick. You're not addressing the person in front of you. So the best answer will be B. Yeah. Acknowledge that and then proceed with that. Okay. Now, however, if the question is nuanced in such a way that it says a client shares a personal experience doing a traumatic personal experience during a session and shares with you that they have personally conducted some form of self-harm on themselves and is currently thinking of further self-harm, what would you do? So if you see words like this, right, self-harm, and is planning to do it right now, right, or planning to do something right now, your answers may change according to that context of the question. Okay. Question 3. A client agrees to an action plan during a session but consistently fails to follow through. What's the best approach for the coach? A. Hold the client accountable by reminding them of their commitments. B. Explore underlying factors that might be affecting the client's motivation or readiness. Or C. Adjust the action plan to make it easier for the client to implement. Or D. Conclude that the client may not be ready for coaching. Okay, so this is quite easy. This is B. Explore the underlying factors. Okay, so this has to do with motivation and readiness as well. Right. This in your competency, it's clients' compatibility and partnership with your client as well. Yeah. So the fear to follow through, what are you going to do? So it should be B. What is holding them back? Okay. Question 4. During a group coaching session, a participant inevitably discloses sensitive information about a colleague who is not present. What is the coach's ethical responsibility? A. Ignore the disclosure and continue the session. B. Address the disclosure immediately and reminding the group of confidentiality agreements. Or C. End the session to protect the privacy of the absent colleague. Or D. Inform the absent colleague about the disclosure. Okay, should be B. Right? This is about confidentiality agreement. Number 5. A client begins discussing persistent feelings of hopelessness and mentions struggling to get out of bed most of the days. How should a coach respond? A, explore how these feelings impact the client's coaching goals. B, refer the client to a licensed mental health professional. C, focus on achievable coaching goals to motivate the client. Or D, provide resources on managing depressive symptoms. Finally, we have differences. Okay, so with A and B. Okay, so some of us say A, some of us say B. Okay, so A. Let's hear those who say A. Why do you think it's A? Explore how these feelings impact the client's coaching goals.
Because we need to ask first what the client wants.
Okay, you need to ask first about the client wants. Okay, and then let's hear. What about Joe? Joe says B.
Well, I don't know. For me, I think when I see the client is feeling, hopelessness, and having some seems like he's having some mental issues, and my thought was to refer him or her to seek him some mental help
Okay.
because I'm not a professional kind of counselor from that sense or therapist for that sense.
Mm. Okay, so it's either A or B. Okay, now, A would have been the correct answer if it says the client starts the session by sharing the feeling of hopelessness and mentions about struggling out of bed, and then I can explore first how it's impacting the client. But because the client begins discussing, which means that the keyword here is discussing. That means there's a back and forth with the coach already. So this exploration has already been done in this discussing with the client. If the word is not discussing something else, then A would have been the better answer. But because the client already has discussing with you, therefore B would be the better option. Okay. So sometimes there's some of these words that very, very close. So whenever you see a question like this that has two answers that are very, very similar, and your mind cannot process anything at the moment, flag this question first, then you can come back again. Okay, so A and B is actually correct, but depending on how it's phrased in the sentence. Okay, so you find that actually the only reason you will not get full marks is not because you don't understand, but because maybe the question itself it's phrased in a very in a very tricky manner. Okay, like Justine would know because she's a teacher, right? So it's a tricky question. Yeah. So question 6: the client shares multiple unrelated goals that they want to work on simultaneously. How should the coach respond to facilitate an effective process? A, help the client prioritize goals based on their values and current circumstances. B, encourage the client to tackle all goals at once for efficiency. Or C, suggest focusing on the easiest goal to build confidence. Or D, direct the client to streamline their goals before proceeding. Okay, so we have so A. Okay, so most of us say A, help the client prioritize goals based on the values and current circumstances. So the best answer is A. Okay, why? Because they share so many different things, right? So we want to kind of see what's most aligned to them. Okay, question 7. A client asks their coach to share details about another client's success stories as inspiration. What's the coach's ethical responsibility? A, share anonymized details to inspire the client. Or B, decline to share and explain the importance of confidentiality. Or C, provide general examples without specifying whether they are real or hypothetical. Or D, share only non-sensitive information about the other client's success. Okay, so now we have C, D, C tough. Yeah, so this is again another very, very tricky question. Um, it looks like D, it looks like C, it looks like B, it looks like A. Okay, now let's take a look at the question itself. It says here the client asked the coach to share details. Details. Okay. Yeah. Share details. So the keyword is ask the coach to share details, which means a lot more specificity about the client's, another person, success or story as inspiration. Usually what happens when someone asks me for details about clients, other people, what are they trying to look for? They're probably trying to look for some assurance information or trying to see what others have done, and the client has kind of moved away from themselves to wanting to look at others. And whenever there's this word here, share details about someone else's, which means that it's not just asking to get a general sense but more about specific details, then it has to do with a violation of confidentiality. And that's why B become the more better answer. C, provide general examples. This will not be the best answer for this case, is because when the client asks to share details, it's almost immediately that this client is looking at others, for some form of information or examples for themselves. So if I do C, I'm just following into the client's narrative, which may not be so useful. And D also is just following to the client's narrative, which is share only non-sensitive information. In fact, this should not be even an answer, right? Because whether the other client success or not, it's different from the current client who's in front of me, right? So persons B success, C success doesn't really matter, right? I will bring the focus back to this individual. That's why coaching is client-led, client focus. So the best possible answer would be B, because of this thing about sharing details, right? But if the client says a client asks their coach to share general examples of success stories, okay, then that will be a different story. But if it's to share details about someone else's story, the moment you see the word details, then there'll be a violation of confidentiality. So this is another tricky question. Again, with just one word change. Okay, good. Now let's take a look at the next question. A client mentions ongoing relationship issues that are causing them significant stress. What is the best way for the coach to proceed? A, explore how the relationship stress impacts the client's coaching goals. B, provide strategies to improve communication with their partner. C, suggest the client attend couples therapy to resolve their issues. D, focus on unrelated coaching topics to avoid delving into personal matters. Which do you think is the most? Okay, this should be quite straightforward. It should be A. Yep. So how does this impact that, right? So that's A. Explore how relationship stress impacts the client's coaching goals. Okay. Now let's take a look at number 9. A client successfully completes a goal earlier than expected and feels uncertain about what to focus next. How should a coach respond? A, suggest a new goal based on the client's previous focus. B, explore what achieving the goal means to the client and what might come next. C, recommend taking a break from coaching to reflect on their success. Or D, shift the focus to areas the coach believes would benefit the client. Okay, what do you think the answer is? Okay, best answer, B. Okay, so quite straightforward as well. Yeah, B should be the answer. Okay. Question 10. A sponsor requests detailed session notes to evaluate the process of their progress of their employee, the client. How should the coach handle this request? A, share the notes with the sponsor as they're funding the coaching. B, decline the request citing client confidentiality. Or C, discuss the request with the client and decide how to proceed together. Or D, summarize key themes without consulting the client. Okay, so this is a bit tricky.
Jedi, I have a doubt here.
Yes?
See, this question is little misleading because It's not saying anything about the coaching agreement, what you have had with the sponsor. So how do we go about it? What is the trick here to understand?
Okay, so try answering first. Then we will go through. With this little information, how would you answer this question? Okay, so CCB. Okay. So B, decline the request citing confidentiality. Okay, so it looks like in B, decline the request and citing confidentiality. Now, if this was not the sponsor, if this was someone else, then B would be the most appropriate answer. But because the sponsor has a stake in this coaching outcome, then the natural best way is we would do with C, which is discuss the request with the client and decide how to proceed together. Okay, now here there isn't a better answer. The better answer is not found here. The better answer is to refer the sponsor back to the original coaching agreement. Okay, of what the scope of details that should be shared. So if this was an official engagement with a tripartite, with the sponsor, the client, and you would have a tripartite session where you define the scope of what progress, what details will be shared with each other, and what are areas that probably you will not be sharing with the sponsor, because sometimes for certain sponsor and the client agrees that okay, that it's okay to update the sponsor in terms of the details, but sometimes it's agreed upon that we will only update the action items, or sometimes the sponsor says don't need to say anything, entirely up to the client. So usually you have this tripartite session before anything here. In this case, when you have four options where you don't have the best possible answer, we'll choose the next best answer. So if I look at A and D, it's probably wrong. So it's B and C, that's the two, right? So in this case, because the sponsor again has this word here, request detailed session notes. When it's detailed session notes, which means that it's too much infringement into the confidentiality. So that's when I'll need to discuss with the client whether the client is open and agreeable to such a thing. Or I'll ask the client, please speak to your sponsor. Okay. Or I'll ask the sponsor to speak to the client directly, to ask the client directly for the information or the notes or the information. Okay. Because here again, there's this word here, or request detailed session notes. So the best way is to discuss the request with client and decide how to proceed. Okay. Yeah. So most of the questions are like this. You may not have like what happened before, what happened after. So the way we kind of choose it is looking at what is some of the keywords there, and then compare the best two answers, and based on that particular question, and then choose the better option. Yeah. Okay. Any questions here? Okay. So far okay. So far easy. Yep. Okay, so if you get all 10 correct, that means you're on your way to 100%. Right? So you begin to see that as we go further, you begin to see that actually it's not really your knowledge of things, but sometimes it's the trickiness of the question, right? The way it's asked, the keywords like detail or stuff.